Paldies par jūsu atsaucību ar dažu minūšu kavējumu.
Thank you. Now, with a few minutes delay, we are ready to start our session. I remind you that people are streaming our conference at the web page and also via Facebook Live. Our major theme is active aging. This is something from the domain of gerontology and connected sciences. So before I give the floor to Anita Jürgenson, a consultant of a demographic center and sociologist, I invite you to get ready to the speech and to the next panel discussion. Anita is going to introduce the next speaker, Anita Jürgenson. Greetings. I'm very happy that almost as many people are present for the second session as for the first one, and we'll be talking about aging. I would like to begin by thanking the organizers who are ready to discuss aging within the context of demographics. Even though the experts from connected domains have been talking about aging and trying to solve the related issues, unfortunately, the general public does not always understand what it is and why we are talking about it. The general opinion is that aging is just an euphemism to discuss the matters of retirement and benefits for old people and so on. But aging is a very vast topic that impacts each and every one of us. We all wish to live to happy, active and fulfilling old age. Therefore, it is important for us to think and make decisions related to our old age right now, in this moment. We cannot solve the issues related to aging and seniors just by putting them into a sleigh and taking them into a cold forest one winter and hoping for the best. I'm sad to see that a few members of parliament have left us, but I hope that those who have stayed will listen, and eventually the decisions that are being taken in the parliament are going to be evidence-based and rooted in full understanding of aging issues. What is the current situation? Who are we? What are we? What are the challenges that we are facing in the future? To get an overview of all these problems, we'll be listening to the developer of Active Aging Index, Oxford Professor Asghar Zaidi.
Okay, let me start here and then thank you. Good morning. It's a genuine pleasure to be here in Riga, and I have had many chances in the past to come to Riga and especially to meet Professor Azans, but I could not, and this is the occasion, and I'm very happy to be here. And Nita has already sort of pointed to the fact that population aging often is seen in a very negative manner, to think that there is a disaster waiting to happen. But in fact, population aging is a reflection of many achievements we have had in our societies. And one of the biggest achievements is that we are living longer, we are living healthier. Also, even thinking about low fertility, that is in a way reflection of another achievement of our society, which is the emancipation of women. Women have better choice now towards fertility decisions, women have better choice towards their career. So population aging in many ways is an achievement of our society, and we should find ways to celebrate population aging rather than being fearful about it. And especially if we think negatively about these challenges that we will face, we are likely to come up with policy solutions which would not be very positive. So here is our opportunity to think positive, think forward, celebrate our achievement, and how can we do that? And the best way to do that is to actually make longevity an asset for our society. If we are living longer, we should be able to find ways, we should be able to accommodate our older generation in a manner that they continue to stay productive in the society, they continue to make contributions to the society. And often we see it is not the lack of motivations from older persons themselves, and we have a great example in front of us. It is often the society which has this negative mindset towards older persons, society which is failing to provide the right kind of environment to tap the fullest potential of older persons. So it is often the enabling environment that is an issue. And when we talk about tapping the potential of older persons, we talk about strategies of active aging. Sometimes we call them active and healthy aging. And the fact that 2012 was the European Year for Active Aging was already an indication that Europe as a whole is willing to embrace this policy. Member states were on board to give a whole year the name Active Aging. And at the start of that year, we all found out that although there is a lot of rhetoric, there is a lot of talk that we need to give better opportunities to older persons, but there is no quantitative evidence which could show us how some countries are doing better, what might be the reasons behind better performance of those countries, what can countries learn from each other, especially in a bloc which we like to think is a very integrated bloc of 28 EU countries, still 28. So I was asked to develop this index, which for the last 4 or 5 years, I haven't done nothing else but this index. And I was very happy to say that Latvia was one of those countries which really took that work of the index to the next step. And I will show how it happened. Okay, good. Now, what I will do, and I probably won't have time to talk about all of this, is to emphasize active aging as a policy approach, and most of what I was saying falls under this category to motivate you, and in fact, you're a very learned audience. You don't need much motivation as far as to understand the usefulness of active aging as a policy approach. But then I thought what would be very useful is to draw some insights from a project, another different project than Active Aging Index project, called MOPACT, which finished last year and which was funded by European Commission. Is called MOPACT because it stands for Mobilizing the Potential of Active Aging. So I drew, out of the 5 years work, I drew 3 slides to give you a broad summary of what we draw out from that project. And then I'll come to the Active Aging Index because the project MOPACT and Active Aging Index connect nicely and provide you some key findings for the EU countries, and of course I will draw special pointer to the findings for Latvia. So hold on to your seats now. Active aging approach rejects the deficit model, and too many of us already think in those manners in which we think older people are passive agents, they needed to be taken care of. What it does, it actually favors a rights-based approach to recognize equality of opportunity and potential of people of all ages. So people should not be discriminated because of their age. That is the basic tenet, basic premise of active aging approach. And the underlying idea is that active and engaged people not only contribute to their own health and well-being and autonomy, but also when we have more active and engaged older persons, that's good for the society as a whole. The strategy operates simultaneously at different levels, at the individual level, so you and me and all of us will have to make efforts to be more active and engaged in our older age, but also it works at the meso level, that the employers have to provide better opportunities for older workers to be, to stay productive. And at the societal level, the society needs to change the mindset in which they give equal opportunities to older persons and they take out ageism in any aspect of the society that exists and affects us tapping the full potential of older persons. And because there is a lot of talk nowadays at the global level on sustainable development goals, I thought it would be also useful to draw up a linkage between active aging and sustainable development. And the moral case behind any sustainable development is that there is no sustainable development that is decent unless we take care of our vulnerable groups of our society. We would not like to have any development which would leave older persons behind, which would leave people with disabilities behind. So the moral case of all development processes is that they should be inclusive of older persons in improving their well-being and quality of life. And in that respect, the 2015 Agenda of Sustainable Development has made a strong pledge, leaving no one behind. And by that we mean, in the context of older persons, in discussing active aging, we mean all development processes should have older persons right at the core of its objectives. But there is also the economic case. An economic case is that, especially in a country like Latvia, where you have a shrinking working age challenge, the economic case is you really will have to make the best use, best opportunity of your older population. So you give them the fullest opportunity so that you can tap the fullest potential of these people. And we know when older people are empowered, when they are active and engaged, they contribute to their own health, they contribute to their self-reliance and autonomy and welfare of the society in which they live. And now I move on quickly to giving you some insights from this five-year-long project. And what I would do is give you 5 findings to start with. One finding is that active aging is actually rising. So there are clear signs of change in the European countries because there's greater emphasis on and experiences of active aging across EU member states. And if I could be blunt, in fact, Latvia is one of the exceptions in that respect. Majority of the EU countries, active aging is rising, whereas we observe decline in Latvia. Having given you the good news of rising active aging, there are greater challenges for Central European countries, especially because there is fast aging societies with active aging low in general, and inequality, in particular inequality between better educated and less educated individuals is much higher in these countries than in other countries, and there is weaker institutional capacity and enabling environment. Also, there are greater new risks, and in particular, the rising one-person families and advances in longevity not keeping pace with health outcomes. And again, Latvia stands out in that respect. Latvia needs much better improvement in health outcomes of its older population, in particular males, than any other Central European country. But one positive news was that aging is not necessarily linked to vulnerability and chronic diseases. Aging can also be a time that we have much mature and experienced individuals in our society, which given opportunities, they can contribute better. And to achieve such healthy outcome, we need greater social investments much earlier in the life course than just reaching the old age and trying to accommodate them at that point. Through this project and through other work, especially in active aging policy approach, EU institutions are playing an important role, but more can always be done. These were the 5 key findings. And then we also find 5 key prerequisites for active aging. One has to have these prerequisites before you embark on any policies and try to attain good outcomes. One, and most of this I have already chatted about right at the beginning, you need optimistic paradigm of aging. So you start to view older people as agents of change rather than dependent, passive people looking for benefits. You need to have life course perspective. So it's not just leaving everything to the old age and then trying to fix things, but actually start investing in your lifestyle so that you could be more active in later life. Also, in pursuit of active aging strategies, it's important to keep heterogeneities of our populations in mind. In particular, when we talk about active aging policies, we often have in mind the elites who are already enjoying good health, who are already having good opportunities, and they are provided even more better opportunities to stay active and engage. We should not be reducing our active aging strategies to the elites, but actually it should be covering other groups as well. For instance, people with disability, to what extent they are given opportunities better in one country compared to another country. We should be looking at multidimensionality of active aging and not just reducing it to labor market, longer careers in the labor market, but actually also looking into aspects of self-reliance and secure living. Diversity. Countries, though, all belong to European Union countries, bloc of countries, but they are very diverse, and we need to understand better the policy legacy, the institutional legacies before we could embark on active aging strategies. And last slide from this project, we also identified 5 top priorities that EU has to promote better lives for older population. And it would not be surprising to you, the first and foremost is to maintain better pension income. The second is to promote healthy life expectancy alongside improvements in life expectancy and longer working careers as well as other non-market activities. So when we talk about active aging, we should not be just talking about labor market careers, but are also talking about giving people opportunities to be better, to be doing more volunteer activities, to doing more lifelong learning, and to do more political engagement. And what Professor Hazans was emphasizing, we need more workers and we need more skills. And thus, active aging is not just about having workers employed, but actually providing better skills to those who want to work and better opportunities to them to be more skillful. And above all, one of the top policy priorities is that we need to start changing the way we age. We need to start thinking much earlier in our life course how we can bring about changes in our lifestyles that would lead us to better health outcomes in later life. Now, let's just very quickly look at what this instrument is. So I took a long route to come to the point which I originally wanted to talk about, but I wanted to emphasize the key findings that we had found from the MOPEC project. And active aging index falls on this single philosophy which Lord Kelvin said more than 150 years ago. When you cannot express it in numbers, your knowledge is of a meager and unsatisfactory kind. And the basic idea is that we can bang on about the promotion of active aging and it's good for the society, it's good for the individuals. Till we have given these numbers, these ideas some numbers, we will not be able to properly understand who is doing better and what might be the reasons behind that good performance. So we were commissioned to do this project on the eve of the European year 2012 to produce quantitative evidence on active aging index, on active aging in Europe, and to highlight the contributions that older people are making to their societies and provide comparative evidence, because sometimes you understand your own country better when you compare it to other countries, and because we have a natural tendency to compare within the European Union countries, we produce this index for European Union, 28 member states of European Union. This picture can tell you everything you need to know about active aging index. And think of this as a pyramid. You know, when you visit pyramid, you look at the base, which is very wide, and that is the basis of everything that is built upon. So we have 22 different indicators, and they are the base of this pyramid. And what we do is we basically find statistical methods to summarize those 22 indicators into a single number. So we normalize them, we put them in the same scale so that we could sum them up, and we get to the top. So the top number you could see is the top of the pyramid. And that is basically nothing but the summary of all the information that 22 indicators have. What others were doing, Professor Zahn was doing very elegantly, is to actually provide you information using each indicator in its own right. And we call that unidimensional analysis. Here we see that active aging is a very multidimensional concept, so we had to embark on synthesizing multiple indicators into a single number. So you could see, I'm sorry, I'm moving away.
Just take a hand in one. Yeah.
You could see here, the first 4 indicators goes into employment domain, so that would be your mid-level aggregation. Another 4 indicators, which we call social participation, goes into participation in society domain, and that's the second domain results. And similarly, what we say that active aging is not just about labor market careers, not just about social participation, activity per se, but actually a finer form of active aging is that you are self-reliant. You're living independently. If you're not dependent on others, that's another form of active aging. So it doesn't have to be that you're doing activities. If you are self-reliant, that's another form of active aging. And then a novel 4th domain is added there to say what are the capacities across countries in terms of active aging and what enabling environment they are giving. Right at the start, I was emphasizing this fact that it's not just individuals, it's the environments which are important to promote active aging. So we capture that, how long people live, what is the share of healthy life expectancy, what is the mental well-being, to what extent they have ICT connections, etc., and social connections. So we could, because of this instrument, of course we could analyze the individual indicators, but we could also analyze the domains, domain-specific results, and we could also analyze the top-level results. And we could, through this framework, show that some countries might do very well here in the domain of employment, but not so good in other domains. And in this way, we promote this instrument, this framework, because this framework becomes much more suitable to parliamentarians and to policymakers, that we can point to each country where they are falling short. So we could tell them they might be doing very well here, but they are falling short in voluntary activities, political participation, they're falling short in mental well-being, etc. So in this way, by comparing different countries' outcomes, we could make this more of a policy instrument rather than just a research instrument. And I will show that in a minute. But before I show that, I want to emphasize that one aspect, that the indicators that we have chosen also reflect rights and responsibilities. So when we talk about employment, people reaching the age of, say, 60 or 65 have a right to be employed. If they want to work, then they have the right to be employed. But there is also the responsibility, that they have a responsibility to make themselves available so that that resource that there is in the society that doesn't go to wasted. So what are the key findings? And again, what I would be emphasizing is to highlight the usefulness of this framework. Professor Hazan and others in the World Bank has done much more in detailed work for Latvia, which I would point to, but I want to start with to convince you that this is a very useful instrument to look at the results. So if you look at the top of the pyramid result, and very often policymakers are interested in that, what we look at there is, not surprisingly, Nordic countries doing very well. To my surprise, UK was doing very well as well. And unfortunately, not unsurprisingly, some of the Central European Union countries are at the bottom. Greece, not surprisingly, is also at the bottom. And some major countries like Italy, Germany, France, they are right in the middle. So there's a lot of scope for even those countries to have improvement. Latvia ranks 19th. And in fact, compared to other Central European countries, there's only one country that does really better than Latvia. So in that respect, overall ranking, Latvia doesn't do badly, relatively speaking, relative to other Central European countries. And here I'm using just the example of Denmark to emphasize the usefulness of this approach. You see here that Denmark is amongst the top performing countries. It's ranked second in the whole group of 28 EU countries. But when we look at Denmark in other domains, this is the employment domain, the second domain is social participation, third domain is independent living, and then enabling environment, we see Denmark does reasonably well in employment, but doesn't do very well in participation in society, relatively speaking. Denmark becomes again top performing country and in the other two. So the benefit of doing this is that even the most advanced welfare state, which is very rich welfare state, we see that we can provide, with the help of this kind of framework, we can provide advice to this country saying how they can, if they want to improve their active aging outcomes, which specific direction they should pursue. And if you look at the Latvian results, we find that Latvia do quite well in employment, but not so well in social participation, even worse in independent living, and not so well in the fourth domain of capacity for active aging and enabling environment. Now, part of the reason why there's high employment amongst older workers could be because there is low pension income. So workers are doing that work out of constraint of low pension income and not out of choice, which you would expect in other Nordic countries. So that one has to make that distinction. But I would still rate that as a good outcome because of the whole speech, the mantra that we are putting forward, that older persons should be given opportunities to be employed and all that. The challenge for Latvia would be that if there will be improvements in pension income, will you be able to maintain high levels of employment amongst older workers if that employment is due to high constraint? And one of the reasons why Latvia is doing not so good here is mainly low pension income, but also low independent living. There's too much reliance towards others, and that's reflection of health outcomes, not very good, in particular, as you all know, health outcomes for men. In the last domain, Latvia not doing well, partly because of the low healthy life expectancy, but to my surprise also because of high mental well-being issues. I didn't know that there will be such a low indicator for mental well-being in Latvia. There is also one other indicator which is typically low in Latvia, which is lifelong learning. And again, that is reflection of the fact that not enough resources are spared to train and retain older workers. I was very impressed by the panel where you were talking about return migration. And I thought there is a great opportunity for Latvia to encourage return migration for older workers, workers who in their youth may have actually migrated abroad, gained lots of skill, have pension to fall back on from those countries. And if Latvia could provide enough suitable working environment, then the same individuals with the skills can come back to their home country. And as you know, when we get old, we like to go back to our roots. So that is a great opportunity if you continue to emphasize active aging as a strategy and look to attract those workers who are retiring from their main jobs in other Western European countries. Okay, good. I'll go quickly now. What we found from the results of 28 EU countries that active aging scores are higher for men than for women, especially when we look at employment and incomes indicators. And that's a surprise given the fact that how much gender equality has been pursued in European countries, and yet we are finding in this cohort that when it comes to employment amongst later life, especially employment of women in the age group of 55 to 64, Europe is still lagging behind. In fact, Latvia in that respect does quite well. It's amongst the countries with the lowest gender gap. If you see in particular the participation in society indicator here, Latvia does quite well, in fact the best amongst the EU countries. Another key finding has been that active aging has been increasing despite economic crisis and austerity measures, but Latvia actually is one of the exceptions in that respect. And especially we observe a reduction in active aging amongst men. For women, there is as good an increase as the case for EU on average, but it is the decline amongst men that is holding Latvia's performance back. Okay, good. So what through this, we have made the case that active aging strategies should be pursued by countries to empower older people. so that we can help them fulfill their potential and improve their quality of life. And if we follow this, this strategy can actually also become a strategy which can be followed in improving the rights of older persons. You know, at the UN level, there is a great debate going on at the moment that there should be a special convention on rights of older persons. And my argument to them was that active aging is a right to older persons, and pursuing active aging strategies actually can help deal with this ageism or denial of human rights of older persons that exist in our societies. And we show through, using the example of Denmark, that this active aging index framework can help identify specific priorities, and through other work that has been done, the active aging index provided useful areas where additional policies and legislations will have to come about if you want to improve the position, the quality of life and well-being of older persons. And in MOPEC project, we started doing this, that if you provide detailed cross-country comparison, in particular if you could do pairwise comparison. So I would be looking for a researcher who could, say, compare Latvia's outcome to Lithuania or Finland, and do, instead of comparison across 28 countries, just do pairwise comparison and say what can these countries learn from each other. But based on the specific findings for Latvia in the active aging index, we find that active aging appears to be low in many dimensions except employment. Social participation is low mainly because of low volunteering and low political engagement. Independent living domain, the third domain, is low mainly because of low median income, median pension income, insufficient opportunities of lifelong learning, independent living, and perceptions of physical safety. I was quite surprised to see a low indicator of physical safety in Latvia because it's one of the safest countries in Europe. So what matters is the perception, because perception determines whether the older individuals are able to come out and be part of the community. It's not the crime rate what matters, is the perception, and that perception needs to improve. The enabling environments reflects a particularly low use of information and communication technology amongst older persons and low healthy life expectancy. And so that's a major area which requires much better inventions and much better improvement, especially mental well-being and mental well-being for women in the country. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Professor, for such a deep insight on what active aging consists of. So you're welcome to join us for the panel. Nita, lūdzu, tu aicinās arī pārējos panelistus.
Nita, please invite the other panelists. We are going to continue our discussion in the same format as during the first session, and I would like to invite our experts to take the floor. Our local experts are medical doctor and professor of Rigas University Gunta Lazdāne, our expert on occupational safety and health, director of OSH Institute Ivars Varnaziņš, and our practicing professor, so to speak, an expert on the labor market, Ingus Alex, who is the director of the labor market department. In Latvia, we enjoy listening to the opinions and recommendations and different clarifications from foreign experts. We love listening to them. We love referring to them. It is very agreeable. But today we have the opportunity to contrast these insights with the opinions of local experts who are directly involved in the implementation and in the practical side of all these things. So what do you think? How do you assess the situation we are living through? What do you think? Is it so bad that we need to bring out the internet memes and bemoan our situation, or things are not so bad? Gunther, would you like to begin? Yes, I would like to begin. Being the only woman, I shall start. My first professional education was as an OB-GYN, and my main research areas were related to gynecology and reproductive health. And when I was invited to speak here at the conference and in the framework of this session, I thought that I was invited merely because I'm an older woman and we're talking about aging. But obviously it's not all that. I thank our guest. I've already had the opportunity to study his presentation the day before, and in order to understand the context of our discussion, and I appreciate it a lot. However, I would like to point out that we know quite a lot about the inhabitants of our country. It's not that we don't know anything. We have had various research projects starting from 2008 when there was the World Bank study and other studies about our inhabitants, and UN projects, global studies on aging matters. Latvia is present in all these studies. So from time to time we are getting insights in what is happening. And there's also the major report prepared by the Center of Disease Prevention and Control. And this center has carried out a very deep, careful research about our senior inhabitants. These are mortality forecasts, circumstances, life expectancy, and different lifestyle aspects. The Public Health Institute of Prerequisites University is the representative of our country in the framework of our participation of Shara. So in the framework of this survey, we are represented by our institute. Latvia only joined the study very recently, last year or the year before last. So we only joined the 7th wave of the project. And just like Professor has said, we hope that this will bear fruit. I spent 15 years at the World Health Organization, and when I came back, I tried to showcase that this research is very important because we're all aging, Latvia is aging, and this is a study that is occurring at regular intervals and allows us to get an understanding of the situation, and also to compare our data in a reasonable way to what is going on in our neighbor countries, because then the data is comparable. But when we addressed 3 ministries and wanted their help, we wanted their support to our research, when we explained that we are the only ones representing Latvia here, and we only asked for 30,000 euro from 3 ministries. So altogether we wanted 30,000 euro for this research project. Do you think we got that? No. So all 3 ministers acknowledged that these problems are very important for Latvia, and that was very nice, of course, that the ministries thought that we are doing an important job. But we did not get financial support. It was the Prerequisites University who gave us financing. And if they, as a private education institution, hadn't given us this support, we would have been excluded from this very important global research. So I'm addressing our statespeople, our legislators, at the ministerial level, we need to have a better understanding of the pertinence of research projects so that we can understand what is going on in the country and draw conclusions. If we are talking so much about demography and the needs of our inhabitants, then we need to support the tools which enable us to work on these matters. Of course, there are many positive examples of raising public mindfulness, like all these nice Nordic walking clubs that we see springing all over with Latvian retired persons happily jogging in the streets. That's very nice. But research and working plans and toolkits which reflect the richness of international experience have not been translated into Latvian, so people are not being able to understand what is going on, people who are working in municipalities or the general public. So it sounds very well. We're working on improving the life quality of seniors, and we're talking about this independence and autonomy and happy lives. But these discussions don't end in anything. They don't bear fruit. There were many initiatives which were supposed to reach the ministries and the parliament way back last year, and they didn't. It just slogs on and nothing happens. So we need a boost. We need to use the results of hardly gained research projects in order to actually improve public health, in order to actually foster public engagement, in order to actually change many areas of public life in our country. And that would be all from me. Thank you. And now we shall give the floor to Professor Vanadziņš. What is your opinion? Thank you. Of course, the greatest challenge for any scientist is to be brief. And unfortunately, I'm gradually losing this valuable skill. Thank you for organizing this event. It is extremely useful for us to be able to share our insights. Of course, there are many things that I would like to outline. Reading about the active aging index and listening to the extremely palpitating presentation by Professor Zaidi, I understand how this is relevant for our country. And if we delve into it deeper, we understand that matters of mental welfare and physical safety, they are sadly neglected in a lot of areas of our life. Perhaps we are truly lacking an understanding of how to implement compensatory mechanisms in order to combat these things. And we talk about improving the occupational safety standards, creating safer work environments, and so on. There are a lot of good things that have been done already, but on the other hand, the statistics show that the number of leaves of absence due to health reasons in our country has been consistently increasing in the course of past years. Is this a good sign? Probably not, despite all the occupational health and safety measures. Another example, the Wellbeing 2020 strategy in Finland aims to make Finnish workplaces the best, so to speak, in Europe. And this is based on a very sane and logical economic assessment that these nice, sane workplaces, safe workplaces will contribute to better productivity and better contentment of employees, generating better turnover. We need to think in these categories, and we don't, unfortunately, not yet. We don't seem to understand the link between health and safety and economically better life. It's just more advantageous to be happier and healthier, and people seem to avoid thinking about this. Our colleagues have mentioned a number of pilot projects which have been working so far and contributing to active aging. We are trying to aid our colleagues in implementing their projects, but we are lacking a sort of coherent, cohesive vision in this respect. And everyone needs to try to begin to understand that a consistent methodology is something that is necessary for sustained development of our country. Until we understand this, nothing good is going to come out of this. Thank you. Ingus Alex. I would like to cordially thank Professor Zaidi for his presentation. We at the Ministry have already examined the results of the project and the report on the Active Aging Index. It was very interesting for us. A few years ago, we got involved in a European Commission project which supported the initial proposal for the research for active aging. And back then it seemed quite interesting to us. So we are happy to be able to use the Active Aging Index as a tool. When we saw how the challenges related to active aging were identified during the initial stages of the project, we brought this topic to the Cabinet of Ministers, and actually a few initiatives were launched because of our increased understanding of the problem. What we heard today from the presentation of Professor Zaidi has also been extremely valuable, and it somewhat echoes our own internal research results. Because we see that when people are just on the cusp of the age of the retirement, that's the moment where we need to implement preventive measures so they don't become alienated later, so they don't fall out of active social life, so that these pre-retirement people stay mindful and active and aware and look after their health and try to be involved in the community life. We think that being involved in lifelong learning is something that is a good stepping stone to happy active aging. And we believe that lifelong learning needs to be valued and underlined. Since in Latvia we are increasing the retirement threshold to 65 years of age, this means that people stay in the workplace for longer. And this also impacts people's health. So in order to stay active in our working life for longer, we need to look after our health, and our work can impact our health. Right now, we see that we lag behind the European average, and that there is a lot to be done in order to improve our rate of productive aging, of staying healthy. This means that we need to improve prevention, we need to improve early diagnostics, and we need to raise public awareness of specific diseases so that people can stay healthy for longer and can work better for longer. Another important thing is something that we see when looking at the results of this project and of others, when we look at this indicator, we see that people are, of course, very different. They're very diverse. We are all individuals. But if the job market is not inclusive, if there are stereotypes in people's minds, if the employers believe that older workers are not capable of accepting challenges and of adapting to the changing environment, then the employers are not being inclusive and accepting, and they're not fostering good change. I hope that these attitude problems are going to change, and we are getting ready to publish a study on the reassessment of the potential of people on the cusp of retirement age, or this pre-retirement age group, so that we can employ them in the most advantageous manner possible. Unfortunately, our surveys show that older people who are nearing retirement are not the top priority for employers, and they are in fact quite prejudiced and not looking to employ them. However, these are the workers who are loyal, who are trustworthy, who are very qualified, who have a lot of experience, who have a lot of specific knowledge in their industries and soft skills as well. So probably they are very useful. Of course, there's this downside of perhaps poor health. This means that if people, both older people themselves and employers, are ready to change their attitudes, then we'll see a positive social change at large. If they don't, then we'll still linger in these negative stereotypes, because people often are quite judgmental, and they say that, oh, you lost your job, that's your problem, that's your own fault, and they're not being very supportive. This is something that needs to be changed, and it is very important to highlight the importance of people's values, their attitudes, and to work on all levels, because many people who are 55 years of age, they think, oh, I'm nearing retirement, why should I change? Why should I learn new things? Why should I adapt? So people on both sides of the divide, both the employers and the older workers, need to work towards bridging the gap.
That would be briefly all. Thank you. As I heard, you are really concerned about the lack of the next step, lack of policy. What's your opinion? What are those concrete matters, challenges, decisions, pleasant or unpleasant, that should be taken? What could you say to all those listening very carefully to what you are saying? What should be done to improve the situation?
All right, thank you. I think one important thing is that active aging at the moment is being pursued across majority of the member states, EU member states. So sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you do a good summary and review of what policies have been pursued, and even there are policies that are linked to the outcomes of active aging index, then you can already get a good sense of what are the good policies to pursue and what are the policies to leave out. For instance, pointing to this employers' attitude towards older workers and the health issues, in my view, health is not just whether you have it or not. It's not 1-0 variable. It's a continuum. You have a different degree of good health or different degree of bad health. And it is the problem of the environment, either because of the employer's attitude or because of the work environment not suitable to older workers, either because of the safety issues, that you need to look into making it more suitable for the same workers to stay productive and valuable. And in many countries in the European Union are embarking on that. So you could learn from that, those policy lessons. Another policy lesson, and especially in the case of Latvia, we sort of agree that lifelong learning would be a good policy to pursue. And even if active aging index could provide you one insight of what policy one should pursue, that's good enough. It has basically lived its life. But we know from other countries' experience that when they pursue lifelong learning policies, they often end up serving those who are already quite learned in the society. So they offer training to those who are already well educated, who are already active and engaged, and there are very little policies happening to basically help those who have given up on their productivity and are not being able to engage with the society, and that is affecting their health and all that. In Poland, we learned that 90% of those actually taking on lifelong learning were women, and majority of them were actually already well educated, and it was more of a hobby to follow lifelong learning. And that's not what we are trying to achieve from those lifelong learning. It's good that they have this opportunity, but we want to go beyond that. So lots of that kind of lessons can be drawn by just looking at to your neighbor and what policy they have followed and where they have succeeded and where they have failed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will continue taking up what the professor emphasized. We shouldn't start from scratch. In 2012, and here I have to recall my previous workplace, the World Health Organization, European Regional Bureau, for 53 countries, including EU member states, and Latvia approved also this. That was the strategy and action plan on healthy aging. It was not active aging, but healthy aging. Well, I think we want to get old being healthy, of course active. So healthy aging. A strategy like this has been developed, and Latvia has even approved of it. And Latvia actually is reporting on implementation of this strategy every 4 years. Another point which I would like also to emphasize is share study. What our public health institution is performing. We are now engaged in fieldwork in Latvia. As a result, the outcomes of this study have been used not only in France and the Netherlands to develop policy, but also in the Czech Republic, which is perhaps closer to us economically, and also in Israel. These data are available, they are comparable, we have indexes. Of course, we should convene our specialists and also NGOs representing pensioners and other groups. Logically, politicians should be involved, and we should decide on the first steps that should be taken, what other countries have already taken, and where we know our weaknesses are. Because this attitude, this approach to old age, to aging, this is important. It's indeed a very important component. And older people sometimes say, no, that's no longer for me. I'm not going to a dance group, or, you know, my mom is 88 years old. I hope she will celebrate in May 89. She learned how to use Skype because she was motivated, really. Her daughter and son-in-law and granddaughters were abroad, and she had to talk to them, but most importantly, she had to see them, so she learned how to use Skype. And my mother doesn't know English, and she is not using the internet, but she is using Skype. That's her friend. Thank you. Just to add to what was said, indeed, there are so many normal examples from other countries that can be taken. We just keep repeating our own mistakes, but perhaps we should learn from the mistakes that others have made. But speaking seriously, we can take some minor things that we could do and take some advice and recommendations. Now to speak concretely what Imants mentioned, issues of rehabilitation, also returning those with occupational diseases back into the labor work. We have 1,500 occupational diseases patients each year, and they are around 50, 55. That's not old age. And if they become disabled, well, I think almost 100% of them become disabled persons. Perhaps the whole system of benefits is wrong for us. Not all of these persons are motivated, perhaps to change their working life at the age of 52. Although they have the state report, they are not using it. Perhaps they are not informed. Perhaps there's no pressure, like in Denmark and in other places in Europe. If you have an occupational disease, then you immediately have a whole team working with you, healthcare specialists, psychologists, and so on, who are exerting pressure on you. We know that the life expectancy is growing in Latvia, and this person has still 30 years to live. So we have such positive examples, perhaps minor or not minor. How do we qualify them? But I really believe we should not reinvent the wheel. Whichever area we take, we can find these examples. But we always want to start with 4 new working groups and new research, which actually has been done already in other countries. So we shouldn't really keep reinventing all those wheels. So I would suggest that there are just some things that we can improve, and we can use the results of pilot projects as well. And we see that the interest is there. We need the will, and we need a supportive environment. That's one of the steps. Hello, Mr. Lipskis. Perhaps you could now tell what you want from decision takers. I will speak about one specific project and show our approach. We have started a project at the State Employment Agency, which is called Support for Longer Working Life. This all started with research and the study, and we were also examining the experience of Austria and of other countries. And indeed, we can take many good things. We can take them, adapt them to the Latvian context. Now about the project. This project is a pilot project to test the best approaches to managing aging on the company level. Here we are talking about company level. We are not now talking about building the capacity of the ministry or of the institution. This is intended as very practical support. We are setting up a team of experts and specialists that would work with companies that have workers 50 plus, where they have many employees like this. This is our target group. And the experts will be a doctor who is a specialist of occupational disease, labor, safety specialist, a specialist of ergonomics, and they will go into the companies and they will perform an audit, but that won't be a tax audit, so the employer shouldn't get concerned. And they will help the company to understand what's going on within the company and what should be done in connection with aging workforce. And at the end, this aging management plan will be drafted for the company. And it will include not only individual assessment of each employee who is 50 and over, but it will also provide a list of support measures needed to retain this workforce, to have this a healthy and active aging at the workplace. And just some practical things that will be added to this assessment. Consultation advice will be provided to individual employees. Also, adaptation of the workplaces, and also certain funding will be allocated, so that the employer would be later on able to make all the calculations and know what he might need in the future. And also, generation mentoring is envisaged. The older employees will teach some skills to the younger ones, and perhaps the younger generation will be teaching some IT skills to the older generation to increase the competence in this. Here also, some kind of funding is allocated for this. And also for some health improvement measures, we will have the principle money follows the client. And if a person works in a company, the person will be allocated a certain sum of money to perhaps to take some measures to improve his health. If indeed, if the person, because of some health problems, can no longer cope with the job duties and might lose his job. And then if the person lacks some kind of professional skills, and if a person needs to acquire new skills, then the person will be referred to the project which is being implemented by the State Education Development Agency, and that by this we mean lifelong learning and education opportunities. So we have identified this priority target group for this. It's not 50 plus in this case, but 45 plus, because we really have to think about early intervention. So this is a project, and through this project we are learning how to develop intersectoral solutions. It's not a secret for anyone. Quite often, public institutions keep producing activities within their own field, but this is an interdisciplinary, intersectoral project. Well, but we are limited or restricted by the fact that we have approximately 3,000 people involved for this individual assessment. But now we see the activity, how actively companies are applying. We see that this project is in very high demand. I cannot give you any results at the moment. It's all ongoing. However, we believe that both in the context of the National Development Plan and thinking about attracting some EU funding and projects, this could be the direction for which we need to attract additional resources. Of course, we will also have, we will assess effectiveness of the project, and we will see whether all the aims have been reached. At this point, we see that there's very high demand for the project, and if it is successful, it should be continued. And in this case, we have not invented the wheel. We have taken the best practice from Austria and from other countries, and we are showing on the company level, both to the employers and to the employees, that with certain kind of support measures, certain changes in mentality or approach, and through some support measures, the person could be able to remain in the workplace and be very active professionally and also socially, and do not really be under the risk of unemployment. We have enough unemployment persons now. We don't need any new ones. So currently, we have established the link between this pilot project and this project in the education sector on lifelong education. So 50, 55 plus, this age group should be kept as a priority. As was said before, those who are active and those who are highly educated, they will always find lifelong education opportunities for themselves. But we have really to try to help those people who have lower level of education and perhaps who are less motivated. We really have to involve them in these projects. And we need support. We need support for putting this priority into the National Development Plan, and also when activities are programmed and when resources are attracted, this problem of aging, this group 50 plus in the field of healthcare, lifelong education, company level support, all these initiatives should be provided support.
Thank you very much. And now we can give the mic to the audience. Your comments, your questions, and the local policymakers can take the floor as well. I hope that there are a few MPs left. Does anyone have anything to say? Thank you. Mark Snails, University of Latvia. We've already mentioned the situation with lifelong learning in Latvia, which is quite lamentable in my opinion. So I'd address my question to you. It is hard to imagine active aging without investing in human capital. And if we talk about measurements, then I think the representatives of the Ministry of Education and Science should tell us, are there a few thousands of euros in our budget to finance the development of digital skills in our senior citizens, which would be so useful for them? There are different projects aimed at research in digital education in force currently in our country, so that we can delve into the situation. And right now we are trying to expand the corpus so that we can include the digital skills not just of people of active working age but also of seniors, because in Latvia we have no such study. This would be a very good opportunity to figure out how digitally literate our seniors are. And how do we compare to Germany, Canada, and other countries who have already researched this? Thank you. A very specific question. Harold, can we have it answered? Thank you for your question. Indeed, we've already managed Latvia during the 7th wave of the research mentioned earlier, and now we are working on financing other research projects from European structural funds, and we are planning to join other projects. Right now we're in the preparation stage as regards the measurement of digital skills. We are working in this area jointly with the Ministry for Regional Development. They are also involved in exploring these matters. So I think both of our ministries are interested in exploring this issue, and your methodology would be of interest to us. We hope that we might be able to attract financing to understand this phenomenon. In Latvia, we have the advantage of having a network of fully connected public libraries which have excellent internet access. So actually these are the hubs for free internet access for any Latvian citizen. Any other comments? Yes, please. I would like to thank Professor Zaidi for his proposals. And I would like to seg from the previous discussions. Maybe we should view older people who have been able to enjoy training and experience abroad as a valuable re-immigration resource. I think that there are three major things that we need to draw attention to. The first is attitude from our employers and from the younger generation, so who are coexisting with the older population. The second thing is the housing issue. I think we have already touched upon the subject of housing, and this is something that is within the realm of competence of our municipalities, who should be dealing with this issue. And the third thing I would like to mention is the work environment. We have been discussing the matter of environment a lot, and it has a lot of dimension. This is training, these are working hours, this is the physical environment, and I think that the normalization of this sphere is something that spreads beyond the competence of one particular ministry. It's an interministerial issue, it's a government issue, it's a legislature issue, and it's a social issue. I think that we should be making decisions based on analysis, on evidence, but in order to make sure that people from all avenues of life and at all levels are capable of evidence-based judgment, we need to start with ourselves, and we need to popularize this approach. I think this conference is a good stepping stone in this direction, and we'll find new points of contact. Thank you. We had two other hands lifted up in the air. Please. Thank you very much. I only wanted to highlight one of the points mentioned by Professor Vanadzinch, the financing for diaspora. This is something that was also brought about by other speakers. About 18% of financing comes not from the state budget, but it's an independently attracted financing by the researchers. So projects such as SHAR, Children's Worlds, and others, which had problems with ensuring financing from the Latvian side, they had to compensate these holes in their budget with independent funding. And I'm frequently embarrassed when speaking at international conferences when I am among those who represent countries wherein no financing was found. It's a huge international embarrassment. Thank you. I have a question and a recommendation. My question is as follows. In Latvia, 10% of people suffer from some sort of disability. 10%. These are disabilities of different types, of different classifications, but these are 10%. How does this compare to the European situation? Is there a certain degree of stigmatization to obtaining the status of a disabled person in other countries? How does this compare to the attitude in Latvia? And what can we do to improve the life of our disabled citizens? And the recommendation that I have concerns lifelong learning. We have a lot of professions which demand regular recertification. Could we perhaps decide on a state level that all the costs related to recertification, that all these costs be included in the financing for lifelong learning programs? Because right now, for example, the nurses who need to use recertification instruments, they get co-financing for certain training programs which they need to complete in order to obtain this recertification. Maybe we can have analog measures. Other comments, please? As regards disabled persons, this is a very painful issue, of course. Everything that is related to disability and work-sustained injury, this is a very topical issue for our country, in fact. And I could speak at great length about changing public perception and the understanding of what people's work capacity actually is, that people who suffer from disability are in fact quite capable. We just need to adjust our understanding of what kinds of jobs these people can do. And every year we have some 1,500 people who get disability retirement because through different factors, they have become no longer able to work in their chosen profession, and this disability is incompatible with an active working life. A lot of things need to be reframed for us to avoid the spreading of this situation. I too would like to continue the topic of disability. You are quite right. When economic crisis hit us, it was obvious that people with disability needed additional income. And there were also people who strove to obtain previously and obtained disability status in order to get additional benefits which would help them to improve their average income. We had different proposals in order to improve our legislative situation in this respect. But these measures are traditionally very unpopular, because whenever we restructure our benefit system, it essentially means that we are taking something from one group and giving it to another. So if we are subtracting from one group, we are taking it away from them. We are putting them in a victimized position in order to benefit another group. And it's a very polarizing issue always. This means that it is very hard to gain approval for any change in the social benefit system for disabled people and similar groups. Right now, we need brave decisions. Thank you, Mr. Papots. Madam Evi Papulan, I would like to thank the organizers. In the course of these two panel discussions, we have had extremely informative insights and discussions. Last week, on Thursday, I called upon the coalition and the Latvian parliament to review the position on the state budget in what concerns the financing for the education sector. I think we need to be very vocal on this subject. I would like to inquire, is there data for Latvia or any other country about the quantified aspect of silver economy? So how many people work part-time in their retirement age? What is their impact for the economy? Because we do have people who work or might wish to work part-time or as volunteers. Is there any data quantifying this issue? Thank you. Any response? I can answer in part to the first question. It's a 0.4. This is what we have from the GDP for science. And that was about your parliamentary discussion and increasing of the state budget. And as regards the other thing, there are a lot of good practice examples from other countries where people are working part-time and are active in volunteering and skill sharing. But we should consider how relevant it is for our country, because in many cases, if older people in Latvia are looking for work, they are not looking for it because they're bored, but because they need a source of income. And when we meet with employers, we should also be highlighting these issues. I think this is something that both the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of Education need to work on jointly, increasing the awareness and the level of education among the employers, so that the employers may be able to understand the situation regarding older workers and the benefits of silver economy. Understanding what leaves of absence and sick leaves are and why they occur for older people, for other people, and so on. Because we need to understand that older people are able to work better, but perhaps not for longer. And in fact, it is my firm belief that we need to apply this principle for all our working population, because unfortunately Latvia is one of those countries where we have the longest working week, but not the highest rate of productivity. So Latvian people work a lot, but are they working very efficiently? Perhaps we should all be working better, but short hours. Professor Lasdan. I had the opportunity to spend a few years in Denmark, and there I saw my neighbors and friends slowly age. And they aged beautifully. they aged very fluidly, and they just changed their work flow. They changed their working week from 5 days to 3 days. They worked shorter hours. Then they merely offered consultations, first every week, then a few times a month, and they helped train younger professionals who still lacked the skills the older people shared, and so on. So Denmark, as a very logical country, has a very good approach here. As for Latvia and our situation, we are in the 9th place in the European Union in terms of employment. But when it comes to the quality of life and contentment and healthcare and so on, and like indexes of happiness and all that, we are in the very end. We are among the worst in the EU. So employment does not make our happiness, not at all. Though we are working, but we are physically unable to be happy because we're just so sick from working so much. And the popular attitude in Latvia is that even we are dying, we need to come to work, because what if we take a sick leave and the employer becomes upset with us and fires us? That's the prevailing attitude in Latvia. And this is extremely connected with large issues of public perception. Thank you.
The very interesting and important question indeed. Silver economy is about two aspects. One is whether our older workers are working, they are given the opportunity to work, and what are they contributing to the economy in that way. The other side of silver economy is what is the consumer demand that older persons generating, to what extent their spending in the economy is generating new employment and new activity. Sticking to the first part where older workers employment generating, I think Latvia, as Doctor said, is in a good position. So just, I would not go against that position. I would say make sure that that position is retained even when there are better pension incomes. If people are doing because they don't have enough pension income, what you say is it's a good thing that has happened to the society, perhaps for wrong reasons, and we want to hold on to that good thing. And we want to make sure that the environment, the working environment, stay helpful to older workers to continue coming back to the labor market, even when they have enough pension. So you really need to work on how age-friendly your employers are. What are the legislations that are protecting older workers? In the UK, it's very difficult to fire somebody who has reached 55. But if you are 54-year-old, 9 months, then it's much easier for employers to fire them. So legislations of that kind actually make employers think twice discriminating against older workers. So I think that's what, so you will improve active aging, you will improve silver economy, and that would have the ripple effect, the multiplier effect, to have better economic activity. Older workers will have better income to spend in the economy, and that would create better silver economy. So I think it's a very important aspect, and Latvia is already in good position. You just have to make sure that you retain that good position.
Paldies, Lipska kungs.
Jā, es gribētu atgriezties.
Yes, I would like to come back to the part-time work. And here we have to admit that in many ways, both this very high employment level in this age group and also other matters can be explained by this economic needs. They need to be in the labor market and to gain revenue. Currently, labor law, in our opinion, is quite flexible to provide those part-time work possibilities. As it was mentioned already, it's important to see what's going on the company level. We should encourage employers, and we have to motivate employers to apply these customized, individualized solutions. This cannot be done by the labor law. We have different economic structures. We have small and medium-sized companies, many, but we cannot put ready-made recipes into the labor law. So we have to address the employers and we have to motivate them. They have to consider individual solutions. At the State Employment Agency, we have started such a campaign like green light to strong, those who are strong in their age. We have such campaigns going on. But we have not only such advertising campaigns, we also have events also in the regions. We talk to companies, to employers. We try to understand what kind of gaps we have, whether the labor law prohibits from looking for individualized solutions. And as regards the silver economy, again, we can speak about those economic circumstances that we need. Our seniors, approximately 15% of those who are pensioners, they are in the labor market. They work for different reasons, mainly, of course, economic, to gain additional income to supplement their pension. But there are also many pensioners who want to be active, but of course they won't save the labor market. They won't be able to fill in all the shortage of the labor market, but they are coming in. Another example, and Professor mentioned this, that the silver economy, so how to engage them mentally. I know that the University of Latvia, they engage all their former employees, not only the faculty members, but the question is, do we have any information in Latvia about employers and big companies who still engage and involve their former employees, or those seniors, in the way the University of Latvia is doing? Well, thank you for your comment. But you see, I would be very happy to go on, but we see Harald has come on the stage. Yeah, we had a phone call from the kitchen, and it is important. Sometimes we, in such discussions, keep speaking about them and us, but I was watching the audience, and the majority of you are 45 plus, with very few exceptions, and most probably you are the ones who will have 1 or 2 additional healthy years of life. Silver economy, it's not about some people somewhere outside, 15% somewhere. It's a story about you. And at some point, I wanted to ask myself the question, how often you, for example, have been involved in lifelong learning and all those matters that we were discussing here? Because all of you have an employer, and Mr. Lipskis just now said, he was speaking about employers, so the question is, are your employers now ready to become involved? Perhaps you should ask these questions now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all our members of the panel, and also the moderator of the panel discussion. Thank you. And now I would like to announce that after lunch break we will have Andris Skride, Māris Kučinskis, Gundars Parādnieks, and Gundars Reiders, who will be moderating the next discussion. So we will have all those politicians here after the lunch break. And we reconvene at 10 minutes past 2.